Right. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. I'm delighted as always to have Alex and Chase with their series on the switch. Today I'm particularly excited to have Sean Croxton here. And I love his bookshelf and can't wait to hear more of him. Over to you, Chase.
All right, thanks, Shrikant. We will go ahead and get started with the switch. I like to start things out with a quote, and today our quote is this from Carol Dweck. Oh, let me turn off my AC. Hold on. Just so there's no extra sound. All right, our quote is this from Carol Dweck. We like to think of our champions and idols as superheroes who were born different from us. We don't like to think of them as relatively ordinary people who made themselves extraordinary. And with that, I would like to welcome to the switch our guest for this episode, Sean Croxton. Sean, welcome.
What's up, Chase? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Hello to everybody here. What's up?
So before we get into some of the work that you're working on now, some of the cool ideas and things that I want to talk about, give us a little bit of your story. So where did you come from? As much as you want to talk about, and the way that I like to contextualize it for people is if you could sort of divide your life into epochs of where I was before and where I am now. What does that look like, and how did you get here?
Where I was before, I would say this all started off like right after college. I studied kinesiology at San Diego State University, and I became a personal trainer like as soon as I graduated. I worked at the gym on the campus, and graduating with that degree in kinesiology, I thought I knew everything there was to know about fitness, nutrition, and health. And I trained people, and I thought I just knew everything and I can just save the world and rid the world of obesity. And what I very soon found out was that most of what I learned in school was absolutely wrong. It was like food guide pyramid. It was like tons of carbs. It was low fat. It was do all of this chronic cardio. And it really showed me that I couldn't depend on school to teach me what I needed to know. And what I started to do is look for other sources of information that would be helpful to me as well as to my clients. And so as I started to learn different things, learn different ways of eating, learning about the paleo diet, learning about Weston A. Price, learning about like nourishing traditions and Francis Pottinger and all of these kind of different types of names that we've never heard of in conventional nutrition, I began to see that this is what really makes sense and this is what really works. So I started to apply that to my clients as a personal trainer, and they actually started getting results. The problem was I was on a college campus and there was nobody to talk about this with. The professors didn't really want to hear it. The students just wanted to party, and I just felt kind of alone. And so I felt this alone feeling for quite a while, like nobody to talk to about this. And then in, 2006, 2007, YouTube started. And I was like, this is it. This is my platform. This is where I can get my message out to more people. So I started up a YouTube channel. Again, 2006, it was called The Food Dude. And I just talked about food and I talked about health and nutrition, but in a way that people can understand. Like I broke it down very simply. I called it edutainment. I wanted to educate people. I wanted to entertain them at the same time. And the channel just grew and grew and grew and grew right out the gate. And so it showed me that I had a pretty good idea going on. And so I did that for a while. I ended up changing to the Food Dude TV and then to Underground Wellness. And I did Underground Wellness for about 7 years. That was a YouTube channel that turned to a podcast as well. And then I went around the country and interviewed people from our online summits and wrote an ebook and all of that stuff. And that was a good 7 years of my life running an online business very successfully. At some point, I just got kind of bored with it. You know, Lisa Nichols, she says passions have seasons, and, you know, every season has an ending. And for me, I had an ending there. I just wasn't really feeling health and wellness. So I decided, okay, what is the next thing I want to do? And I found myself reading lots of books on personal development. And one thing that I noticed, Chase, was that my clients, my health coaching clients who got the best results were the ones who had the best attitudes. That was huge for me. And so I started studying personal development, took a year off from Underground Wellness, got rid of that business, started up a personal development business, started the Sean Croxton Sessions, started interviewing experts whose books I was reading, and then moved on to the Quote of the Day show, which I'm doing right now, which is a 5-day-a-week motivational podcast where I play little clips, like 5 to 7 minute clips from speakers, and I find the clips on YouTube, and people wake up every morning and they get their quote of the day, their daily motivation, and they love it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's easy.
That's actually how I heard about you. So my fiance has been listening to you for a very long time. And when I met her, she introduced me to the Quote of the Day podcast, and we've been listening to it together a bunch for the past couple of years. So
That's awesome.
It's been cool. So who do you think had the biggest influence on you in your life? You know, you mentioned with the Sean Croxton Sessions podcast, you were interviewing some of those people. Like, who did you reach out to first? Why? And who was like the biggest of those influences for you?
In the personal development world, I would say it was Bob Proctor. My gateway drug was like Napoleon Hill and Tony Robbins, and then it went to John DeMartini. I never got to interview Napoleon Hill, of course.
Yeah.
I never got to interview Tony Robbins or John DeMartini. But Bob Proctor was the guy who I resonated with the most because he was kind of doing the same thing I was doing when I was on YouTube. He takes these ideas, these universal principles, and makes them very easy and consumable for his audience. And so I think that's where I learned like the ABCs of personal development. But to even go further back with your question, I would say the most influential person, quasi mentor was Michael Jordan. I was fascinated with Michael Jordan as a child. I had posters all over the house, posters on my ceiling, jerseys, shorts. Like I literally thought I was Michael Jordan. I read every single book there was about Michael Jordan. Pretty much all of my book reports in school, in elementary school and high school were about Michael Jordan. I was obsessed with Michael Jordan. And I think what I learned from Michael Jordan was work ethic. Like what you get out of something is exactly what you put into something. Like he knew what it took to win. And just learning about that mentality at such a young age, it instilled in me just this willingness to do whatever it took to put in as much work as you need to put in order to get the result that you wanted. You know, some people just want to put a little work in and get a little bit out, but that's not really how it works. You know, I'm the guy who says, kind of like, I had this clip of Kobe Bryant on the show about a month ago, and he was talking about one of the Mamba mentality principles. And one of those principles is to be obsessive. And he says, it's very, very simple. I do a basketball session from like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Then I go home and I rest and I sleep and I hang out with kids. And I go do it again from 12 to 2. Then I go home and take a shower and hang out with kids and da-da-da. And then I go out again at 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. and I do it again. And he knows that nobody's going to be able to work as hard as he worked. And since nobody's willing to work as hard as he works, then no one's going to be able to get the results that he's getting. He knows he's the hardest worker. And that's what it's really all about. It's not about, because I don't want to play into that myth that you got to work really hard in order to be successful. But you got to work hard to be successful. You know what I'm saying? You have to put in the time. And if you don't put in the time, if you don't put that work into your craft, it's just probably not going to pan out for you.
Was that mentality of work ethic, like, was that something that you grew up around or near? Like, did you have family members who also had that influence on you? Or was that something that was like a change in mindset for you?
My dad was a hard worker. My dad was in the Korean War, and something happened, and he had to go work at Macy's as a shoe salesman. And I remember my dad coming home, 6:30, got off the BART train in the Bay Area, drove home, and he would just be so tired, like his feet hurt. He had really bad feet. He had an incident in the war where he had to stand in like freezing water, right? And it kind of screwed up his feet, but he had to be on his feet all day. And so I learned hard work from him, but I also learned it from him because on the weekends, he worked at the swap meet. He sold like some really crazy stuff like Rambo knives and butterfly knives and stun guns and like bootleg Guess and Gucci t-shirts and sweaters and stuff like that. So I was around that. And so I was able to get that modeling, that built some neural pathways in my brain. The fact that I saw my dad like working really, really hard. And also, I'll never forget that big, big wad of money in his back pocket. I'll never forget that. It was just huge. And I was like, man, what I can do with all that money, right? And so I got that from him, but I also got it from my mother, because when my parents got divorced, my mom had to work, 3, 4 jobs at a time in order to support me and my brother. And so she just worked. I hardly ever saw my mom growing up because she was always at work. Get up in the morning, she's gone. Go to bed at night, she's gone. And so, I got a lot of that from her as well as my father.
Yeah.
What do you think the missing element is for people who work hard but never quite achieve what they're trying to get? Is it, knowledge?
Knowledge is one, but you have to be willing to take action with that knowledge. I know a lot of people who are just learning shit. They're just learning stuff all the time. They never stop learning, which is great. I mean, look at all the books behind me. I never stop learning. I spend hours today reading, but I'm willing to do something with it. A lot of people say, I can't do something until I read the next book. I can't do something until I get the next certification. I can't do something until I'm done with this. And it just goes on and on and on and on, and they never really get started. And so it has to be a combination of the learning and the doing. You just can't be a consumer. There's consumers and there's producers. I like to think of myself as both. But a lot of people are just consumers. They need to continue to consume products and online courses and books, and it's just endless before they do something. And I think that it's more of a fear than anything else. It's just a mechanism that people use, I'll do it after this, I'll do it on Monday, but really they're just scared. And that's okay. Everybody's scared. Whenever I do something, I'm scared, but I know that I'm going to have to do it anyway. I'd rather do it scared than not do it at all, because the person who I become when I don't do it at all is not a very nice person. I'm constantly disappointed in myself. I've got that gnawing feeling all the time in myself. Back in the day, before I started creating products, I would always set a New Year's resolution. And that New Year's resolution was to write a book. I'd always wanted to write a book since I was a little kid. I used to go to the bookstore as a kid. Like, it's funny because I still do the same thing now. I was always at the bookstore. Like, my friends were like playing. They're like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to Walden Books. I'm just going to walk around and look at books, right? I'm just like a little 11-year-old kid. Like, what is wrong with you? And I always decided this thing, like, one day I am going to write a book. And so I kept setting this New Year's resolution. And then December 31st would come around and I'm at the bar with my boys. We're wanting to have a really good time. 11:30 would come. And instead of being like excited for the new year, I would probably feel my worst, because I'd always look back and go, this was supposed to be the year that I did it. And then I would say, but I didn't do it. So I would always walk home early. And I would just I would go to sleep. And I say, okay, this is going to be the year. I don't like that feeling. And there are too many people right now who are feeling that feeling all of the time. Like, they know what's possible. They have the idea, they have the thought, but they're just not doing it yet. And I tell you, the cure for that gnawing feeling is just to go and do it, because there's nothing worse than the gnawing feeling. The most terrible thing can happen to you by doing it, but it's nowhere near as bad as the feeling that you walk around with right now. So let's go do it.
Yeah. What gets people over that hump? I mean, that's advice that I've heard before, and it's advice that I've executed on, but it almost feels like sometimes, even if you do that, even if you just go do it and you have some success with it, the next thing in line, sometimes that feeling is still there. It's like, I didn't retrain my brain to not feel that pressure to procrastinate out of fear, or not execute out of fear, or whatever the option. Like, what gets people over that hump of being able to just execute on something like that?
I think you have to have what I call more reasons than rewards. And what I mean by that is you have to have a huge why, and the why can't really be about yourself. Well, it can be if you want it to be. There's no rules around this thing. But for me, I had to get out of my own head and start to look at how I can use everything that I knew to help other people. And at the same time of helping other people, be able to make enough money where all of the things that I really valued in life, I can do more of those, right? So I had to have big reasons. I had to have huge reasons. And when I say reasons over rewards, what I mean is like your ego's rewards. You know, your ego is a trip because it really, really likes things the way that they are right now. It's like infatuated with the status quo. All it wants to do is survive. And the biggest thing that it fears is the unknown. So it's like you have this idea, and you're like, I'm gonna go create this business. Your ego's like, no, F no. Like, well, think about it, but you're not gonna do it. And you might start for like a week, but what happens? You start to get those voices in your head. They're like, no, you can't do this. This is impossible. Everybody's gonna judge you. Everybody's gonna criticize you, on and on. And that's what I'm talking about with the rewards. Your brain would rather avoid pain than have pleasure. And the pains that it wants to avoid are those rewards. So what is the reward? The reward is I don't have to put myself out there and be criticized. I don't have to have my work questioned. I don't have to, defend my work. I don't have to outshine somebody in my family. My sister or my brother is a successful one, right? So those are the things that we go through. That's the things that our brain goes through. It just wants everything to be the same. And so when you have more reasons than you have rewards, that's when your brain starts to go, okay, this actually sounds pretty cool. And getting back to that values thing, that was probably one of the most important things I ever learned. That was my big moment, because I was having a hard time making a profit. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle. We have a hard time making money because of our money mindset stuff that we got as kids. And one of my friends one day, I was complaining to him about this. I was like, dude, I've got like 30,000 YouTube subscribers and I'm still broke. And he's like, yo, I'm gonna send you something and I want you to listen to it. And he sent me this interview with Dr. John Demartini. And it was all about your values, like identifying your values, identifying what's important to you. And I took the test and I found out what my core values were. My core values were like health, food, fitness, social life, learning, service, stuff like that. But nowhere in that top 10 was finances, earning, saving, and investing money. It was way, way, way on the back burner. It just wasn't that important to me. And so I had to sit down and say to myself, okay, with a piece of paper actually, and go, okay, how is me $100,000, I was broke back then, going to benefit or enhance the thing already important to me? How's it going to influence my social life? Going to influence my ability to stay healthy? How's it going to influence my ability to educate myself? Okay, if I'm making $100,000 a year, I can buy any book I want to buy. And I did that. If I want to be healthy, I can buy any organic food that I want to buy. I can get 3 gym memberships. I can get a personal trainer. I can do whatever I want to do. So I literally had to sell my ego on the idea of change, because my ego got to go, oh, we like the way things are, but you doing this thing is actually going to make things better. And that was one of the keys where my brain was like, okay, man, go ahead and do your thing. And what I did was I got myself into full alignment, and it completely changed my whole entire life. Just that one interview. See you link for that, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I was just going to ask if that's something you can give me a link to. I'll put the link in the show notes as well on the podcast side of things.
Oh, all right.
You mentioned money. So that's definitely one of the topics that I wanted to get into. First of all, why the heck don't they teach personal finance stuff in school? Like, what is so wrong in this system that is not something that we learn as young kids?
You know what? I don't know. I really don't know. It'd be really nice if they did, but I have no idea. But I think what's even more important than the money management stuff is the actual mindset behind money management. There's this quote, and I'm not going to be able to tell it to you like word for word, but I can give you the idea of it. It's from Jen Sincero's book, You Are a Badass. And she says, only 5% of people who attend seminars, really expensive seminars, or take classes and whatnot, 95% of people never do anything with the information that they learned. What do most people do when they go to seminars? They take notes. Then where do those notes go? In the drawer. You never look at those notes again in your life, right? When you leave the seminar, you're like, yes, I'm gonna do it. You have all these new friends and stuff, and you're probably never gonna talk to again in your life. Like, I'm gonna do it. And then like Monday, you're pumped. And Tuesday, you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't feel like doing it anymore, right? We do this. It's 95%. You go to a seminar, 95% of the people there aren't going to do shit, pardon my French. It's true. Only 5% do. Why is that? Because we can learn money management tools and strategies and baby steps and all of that stuff. That's the doing part. But what's the creative formula? The creative process is be, do, have. So if you're not the kind of person who does those type of things that they're telling you to do, you're never going to have the results that you want to have. And so we have this kind of upside down creative formula. Now, I don't mean to fault the money mindset or the money experts out there, but because they're just teaching what they know, and what they're teaching actually works when you do it. But how do we get people to actually do it, to follow through? And that requires change in the mindset. Everybody's tried to change their finances before, and they do it for a little while and then they stop. They save up a little bit of that emergency fund, then what happens? They see a really cool, I don't know, sweater or a jacket or a pair of shoes, and they're like, oh, it's not gonna hurt. Boom, swipe it, and that money's gone. Like, that's what we do to ourselves. There's a reason for that. And it mostly has to do with what's going on in here than what we're actually doing in terms of our financial plans.
Yeah. So what is that? What is the mindset that most people have with money that causes that?
There's 5 things I like to talk about. I've been developing recently. It's number 1, it's the 5 F's. It's your filters, it's your fears, it's your feelings, it's your friends, and it's flow. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Filters is this. Everybody sees the world differently. How many different perspectives are there in the world? There's like 7.6 billion different points of view. Everybody creates a different reality based on their what? Based on their beliefs. Because the beliefs are the core. And on top of those beliefs is your thoughts and your feelings. On top of those thoughts and feelings are going to be your opinions and your attitudes. And that creates your frame of reference. And whatever does not match that box, I call it the being box, like the be, do, have, that's your being box. Whatever doesn't match what's inside that box, you reject. Whatever does match what's inside that box, you accept. Because what are we obsessed with? What is the ego obsessed with? It's obsessed with being right. Being right all the time. That's what we want to do. We want to be right and make everybody else wrong. We want to hold on, and like, your brain is a belief confirmation machine. It wants to continue to confirm whatever you believe to be true. And that's how you see the world. It's like the lenses that you put on every day and you see the world. So if you happen to have a belief that rich people are greedy people, how many of us learned that as kids? Anybody? No? It's just me? Let me see some hands out there, right? A lot of us learned that rich people are greedy, miserable people. Well, if you're going to start a business, you want to make a profit, what's that going to make you? It's going to make you a rich, miserable, greedy person. And you live in this conflict, right? Because you want something, your thinking mind, your conscious mind says, I want to create a successful business. But your subconscious mind, where all these beliefs reside, say, no, if you're in conflict, I'm not going to let you do this. Because if you do this, you're wrong. And you don't want to make yourself wrong. You always want to make yourself right. We have all these beliefs. If you make money, you can't be spiritual, despite the fact that all of our spiritual guides that we go to, all the people whose books we read, they're all rich, you know? We think money is scarce. There's so much money in the world. It's ridiculous, right? There's all of these beliefs that we got as kids that we haven't really examined.
Mm-hmm.
We got them before we had any real choice in the matter. We got them when we were being enculturated. We got them when we were being socialized. We got them when we were trying to figure out who to be in order to be accepted by our parents and our social network, right? And so filters is huge. You have to identify exactly what those beliefs are, and you got to change them. Number two is going to be fear. And this is super duper important, because all of these negative associations about money that we take on as young people, again, we didn't really have any choice in the matter. These associations are wired into our brains. There's like neural pathways for all these negative associations with money. And so here's what happens. Your amygdala, which is your emotional processing center, we can call it your fear center though, right? It's your fear center. And so whenever you have some desire to create more money for yourself, your amygdala lights up. Actually, let me back up. There's something in your brain called the conflict detector. It's called the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex, whatever, but it's the conflict center. And it monitors your decisions and your actions for conflicts. And so when you want something like more money in your life, but your amygdala has all these associations that money is bad, it's evil, people are going to hate you, you're going to be the enemy, you're going to be miserable, it wakes up your conflict center and it goes, doo, 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 doo. We got a conflict, and it shuts everything down. It sends a message to your prefrontal cortex in the front of your brain, and it says, nope, stop the show. Now you can't plan anymore. You can't decide anymore. You can't take action anymore. You can't imagine anymore. This is what happens every around January 14th. Because we set these New Year's resolutions, and then for 2 weeks, we're like, yeah, I'm doing it. And then that voice starts going, you can't do this, and boom, you're done. End of the year comes, you're like, oh, I was supposed to do it, but I didn't. I'm going to do it this year. That's the fear coming up. We'll go to feelings real quick, unless you want to jump in.
I definitely have questions about that. So both of those seem to be subconscious processes, right? And you essentially said, like, if we leave these uninvestigated, unexamined, then we're just riding the train, right? We're not driving. How do you actually retrain some of those subconscious processes? Because it's one thing to be consciously aware of your incompetence. You need to somehow move into the conscious competence and then hopefully unconscious competence in those areas.
Absolutely. So one thing that we do, there's a few things I'll kind of run with here. Number one is I have people look at what they heard their parents say, what their parents did as well. And so, for example, maybe mom or dad was never at home because he or she was always working. What did that mean? Money takes parents away from kids, right? Maybe your parents fought all the time over money. Maybe that's something that you saw, maybe it's something that you heard. From a child's perspective, if your parents got divorced, you created a belief that money makes relationships end. It makes parents get divorced, right? And so I have people look at their history and what happened and what meaning may they have attached to whatever happened. Then we move over to what I call logic and language. So there was a 6 or 7 year span around college where I had the worst negative self-talk you will ever hear in your whole entire life. I mean, it was terrible. It was like this tape was playing over and over again. And I picked up this book called The Structure of Magic, Volume 1. Have you heard of this one?
No.
No, it's an NLP book, a really old NLP book by Bandler and Grinder. And I learned about generalizations, deletions, and distortions. And basically, what we tend to do is we generalize. For example, we say, all rich people are greedy. is that really true? It's not true. And so basically I say, okay, are all rich people greedy? And people in my class will be like, no. Okay, if rich people are greedy, how do you know? Well, because my parents told me. Okay, if rich people aren't greedy, if all rich people aren't greedy, because you just said that they're not, and if you really don't know, what choice does that leave for you? I can choose to be a generous rich person. There's actually 6 questions here. I'm just going to do 3 of them, so I won't talk all day here. But it opens up, what will be called is it puts a crack in the category. And what I mean by that is our brains, what they like to do is they like to put things into categories. Our brains really love to create biases. And so instead of our brain coming into a situation and having to like figure it out every time, what it does is just goes to the category. It says money. Okay, what is it? What's in the category? What's in that bucket? Oh, rich people are greedy. It's scarce. There's not enough of it. It makes parents fight. It makes parents get divorced, and on and on and on. And so that's where our brains go, but it's not really truth, right? It's not really a fact. A fact is something that's indisputably the case. And so if we can look at this and we can look at the language, and you say all rich people are greedy, I just go, is it all of them? And again, they say no. Okay, that created a crack in the category. That created an opening where they can go, oh, why have I been telling myself this forever, right? Is money really scarce? Is money scarce for everyone? No. Okay, now what does that open up for you? Oh, I can be abundant. And we just go through all of these different beliefs. And at some point during the class, my students go, I can't believe I believed all this stuff all my life. Because they've never taken the time to just sit back one day and just examine what it is that they believed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's how you unplug the previous sort of unconscious behaviors with putting cracks in there and basically being able to extract that. Now, how do you go with good habits, good behaviors, good mindset, and fill the gap?
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, so, it seems to me like that's a really good way to sort of break down some of the mindset of something like all rich people are greedy, which is obviously, something that many, many people have ingrained and is worth putting cracks into because it holds you back. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at something like Charles Duhigg, Power of Habit, he talks about in habit retraining, you can't just like turn off a habit. You can't just shut the power off and expect it to go away. You have to be able to replace that with something. You've still got the triggers in place. You need some new behavior that gives you some new reward. And I know that's slightly different territory than the habits of the amygdala, but how do you replace this mindset around something like money with what could be there that would be more useful?
Well, we identify these beliefs with these questions, and then I have them write down their new belief. And then we also use what's called conscious redirection. And so when these negative beliefs start to come up, because now they're aware of them, now I say, okay, you're at the stoplight and the person next to you's got a G-Wagon, $100,000 G-Wagon, and you automatically go into like, look at this douche next to me, they must have stolen this and da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Because that's what we do. Stop yourself. Change the line of thinking. Ask yourself a different question. What did this person do in order to get this? What was their service? What did they do? And so when you do this over and over again, you catch yourself over and over again, what you do is you unplug that neural pathway and you prune that deal out. It never fully goes away,
sure,
right? But you start to reduce, you start to turn down the power on it, but you also give yourself an opportunity to create a new pathway. And this is a process. And it's going to go on for a really long time. Yeah. Habits, you only want to change 1 or 2 at the same time, because it takes time, it takes effort. And so this is something that my students are going to have to go through for probably as long as they live, to be honest, yeah. Right? But as long as they're aware of it, I'm happy with that. As long as they can catch themselves, I'm happy with that. As long as they can ask themselves, what is my choice? in this situation? Can I choose to see this differently? I'm happy. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. That's sort of the perspective that I wasn't necessarily fishing for that answer, but that's sort of that answers the part of the question that I was looking for. Cool.
What it's really about, I mean, in this particular section, is just awareness.
Yeah.
Just getting them to be aware, because this is something that was completely out of their awareness for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And just me bringing it back into awareness just allows them, again, to have a different choice.
Yeah. And it feels like that fear element is always there. I mean, people identify with their attachments to their current results, right? They identify as part of who they are as, oh, I'm a working class person of a working class family. I am, and by seeing the potential of yourself moving up in your finances, like, that's also a loss of identity. That's losing part of who you sort of thought you were, in a sense.
Yeah, it's the unknown.
Yeah.
It's scary. I one of the most influential books I ever read was Life Unlocked by Serini Pillay. Really good guy. And he has a chapter on the fear of success. And I probably read this book in maybe 2009 or so. And I'm, my girlfriend at the time was next to me and I'm reading this chapter and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. We just checked them off. I got that one. I got that one. I got that one. I got that one. Because a lot of us feel like we have a fear of failure. And yes, that's true. But a lot of us have a fear of success because success is something that a lot of us have never known before. And if you haven't known it before, it's scary. It's brand new, but it's an opportunity for you to discover a side of yourself that you've never discovered before. It's like in this journey, in the beginning of the journey, you're the person who you are. At the end of the journey, the current journey, we'll call it the end of this level of the video game, right? Mm-hmm. You're a different type of person, And to become that different type of person, number one, you've got to choose to become that type of person, but also number two is on the way to the end of that level of the video game, you are going to encounter obstacles. Mm-hmm. It's the obstacles are where you grow. The obstacles are an opportunity for you to ask the question, who am I? Who am I? Am I a quitter? Am I the person who just goes back scared, Or am I the person who is going to dig inside and find those invisible powers that are inside of me and use them to get through and to navigate this obstacle so I can move on to the next obstacle and I can move on to the next obstacle. And as you move from obstacle to obstacle to obstacle, asking yourself, who am I? You become somebody different. You can't be afraid to take risks, unconfident, indecisive, and get to the other side of the level. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. You got to ask yourself the question. I learned this really cool question from Daryl Rutherford, great book called So Why Aren't You Rich? The question is, if money was no longer a problem, who would you be being? If money were no longer a problem, who would you be being? And that's like one of the best questions you could ask, because that allows people to go, oh, who would I be being? I'd be confident. I'd be a risk taker. I'd be decisive. And therein lies the gap of who you need to be versus who you are right now. How are you going to get there? You got to move. Mm-hmm. But the first thing you got to do, though, is having a big enough reason to do it. Yep. Having more reasons than you have rewards, getting emotional about it. Emotion, energy, and motion, because that emotion is going to fuel you through your journey. But if it doesn't really matter that much, if you're doing it because you feel like you should do it, if you're doing it because your parents want you to do it, then you're probably not going to do it. And that's where we run into self-sabotage over and over and over again, because we're not enthusiastic about it. We're not optimistic about it. We're just going through the motions because somebody told us that we should do it. And that's just not the fuel that gets you to the other side of the level. It's not.
Have you read Joseph Campbell? Are you familiar with The Hero's Journey?
Yeah, totally. One of my favorite documentaries of all time is Finding Joe. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's basically what you just described is the hero's journey. Like mm-hmm. there's the the call to adventure, which is your sort of waking up moment of realizing there is something here. There is a gap. I don't know how big it is yet. I don't know exactly what it is, but somehow there's a gap between who I am now and who I could be. And as you start off on that journey, there are trials and tribulations that teach you who you are, and you gain from it. You come back around. You may complete the circle, but you're not the same person you were when you left. Yeah. And that's hard. That's hard for people.
It's hard. And what is one of the most important parts of the hero's journey? It's meeting the guide. Mm-hmm. Luke Skywalker meets the guide. Like, everybody's got a guide in these types of stories. And so that's what I really relish is the opportunity to be that guide for people, to help them to navigate those obstacles and help them understand, like, this is the process and it's going to be okay. You're going to have failures. That's just going to be the way it is. Like, everybody has failures. It's really the way that you look at them. We played a clip of Gary Vaynerchuk on the show last week, and he said something really interesting. And I'm not sure if I fully agree, but I'm starting to get there. He said entrepreneurship can't be taught. And it was interesting because he was doing a talk at USC's School of Entrepreneurship. And he followed that up with, he said, I'm lucky because my mom instilled me with a lot of self-esteem. And that's what it's really about, is self-esteem. Self-esteem is what's going to allow you to get to that first obstacle and be like, I can do this. But if you don't have any self-esteem, you take the obstacle personally. And you go, oh, this isn't for me, and it's just confirming what I think about myself. I'm not good enough, and which are things that people need to work through, and they can work through. But you have to be able to change your self-esteem. You have to be able to expand your self-image. You have to be able to think of yourself differently. And if we can't think of ourselves differently, it's really, really hard to get through that journey.
Yeah. So I want to let you finish on the five things, but I want to plant a flag on something that you just said about the Gary V quote, which was that you're not sure if you fully agree with it yet. At some point, we'll come back to the idea of either conflicting or ideas in personal development that are mutually exclusive. So at some point we'll come back and address that, but let's go to the five. We're on feelings, friends, and flow.
The next one's going to be feelings.
Okay.
So people say that, well, a lot of overweight people eat their feelings, right? They have repressed emotions. Like, for a lot of us, we grew up thinking that negative emotions are a bad thing. Emotions are just emotions. Like, if we didn't have these emotions, let me rephrase that. Every emotion that we experience has a purpose. We have anger for a reason. We have shame for a reason. We have guilt for a reason. We feel depressed for a reason. And a lot of us are taught throughout our lives to suppress those emotions. And, if you believe that everything is energy, and you believe that there's a vibrational scale, we'll say, and that where you are right now is your current level of energy, or vibration, we'll say, and where you want to go is a higher level of vibration. Feeling is conscious awareness of your vibration. So I like to just think of it as like a hot air balloon. So you are where you are right now, and then you're trying to get this to this higher level of vibration, which matches the place where you want to go, which matches the result that you want to get. So this is hot air balloon, and we need to take it from point A to point B. There's two ways we can get there. Number one, you can change your thoughts, because their thoughts are going to create your feelings, and your feelings create your thoughts. So if you're feeling a lot of negative feelings, you can just identify, like, what are the thoughts that are coming up, and how can I redirect and change these thoughts so I have a new feeling? If I have a better feeling, it increases my vibration. I can start to move up the scale. That only goes so far, though, because for a lot of us, we have a lot of repressed emotional baggage that we've stuffed away. I like to think of negative emotions as beach balls. emotion, energy and motion. Beach balls, we're supposed to do what with beach balls? We're supposed to, play volleyball with them and let them move, right? But what do we do with our emotional beach balls? We take them and we push them underwater. We push them out of sight. And it requires a lot of energy. And if you think of, you ever seen that movie Inside Out, where it's like all the emotions and they have personalities? Like all of your emotions have personalities. They're like little beings, right? And they can get their feelings hurt. And so let's say you've got anger and you're holding anger underwater, and anger is saying, what are you doing? What if somebody tries to get over you? What if somebody does something bad to your kids? Like, I'm supposed to come to the rescue. Why are you holding me underwater? And what happens over time when we're holding our emotions underwater for so long? At some point you get tired. At some point you get distracted. At some point you get weak. And what happens? Beach ball flies through the air, right? You get weak. And that's what happens to a lot of us. We allow our emotions to be suppressed for so long. And then at some point we blow up and we go, oh my gosh, like, where did that come from? It came from the fact that you've been holding on to an emotion underwater for so long. And going back to overweight people who, some of them, not all of them, tend to be emotional eaters. The food feels good, right? It's a way of numbing the pain. And the way that I like to apply this to money mindset is what we tend to do is we spend our emotions. We start to feel a little bad. We start to feel these feelings. And what do? We go on Amazon.com and we start buying stuff. We go to the mall and we start buying stuff. Maybe you're saving up your emergency fund. Like, I'm going to get this $1,000. You got $600 in there. You had a really bad day. Some of these feelings started to bubble up from below the surface. And you're like, yo, I'm going to Bloomingdale's and I'm about to go nuts. And the thing about it is, like, retail therapy is addictive. You really get like a dopamine hit every single time you do it. So you have to spend more and more and more money every time. So it's really hard to get ahead. And so the cure for this is to learn how to release these emotions. A couple of things that I teach my students to do. Number one is release writing. When you start to feel these emotions, sit down, loose leaf piece of paper, and just write. I feel ashamed, and just stream of conscious write for 10 minutes. The hand is connected to your subconscious mind. Your hand is a creator. And so you might think, I don't know what I'm going to write. But as soon as you start writing, you're not going to be able to stop. You're just going to go, go, go. And so you just write as long as you have to write until you start to feel like that emotion is starting to empty out. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing that you can do, which is kind of fun, is you can do a temper tantrum technique. You ever seen batting? And so you just get like a plastic bat or like a soft stick, and you get a pillow and you just beat the hell out of that pillow. And you just say whatever it is that you need to say, not directing the anger at yourself, but just letting it out. Again, emotion is energy and motion. And these are the ways that you can release some of that emotion that's making you spend money that you don't really have. Questions about that before I move on?
Yeah. So I definitely, as far as emotion and things, I think I take the line more of the Stoics, where, they would say things like, with anger in particular, anger is a natural feeling. It comes up. However, as a being who is both rational and social, you have the ability to essentially rationalize yourself out of unreasonable anger. So, for example, this is the example I like to use. I think it actually comes from somebody who I was hearing teach Vipassana meditation. But if you watch the half-life of anger, if you're just very aware of the actual emotion of anger, it's fairly short. So, you get in some sort of road rage incident, somebody cuts you off and they speed away, and, nobody's hurt. Nobody's basically, real world, the worst case scenario or the worst case consequence is that you're 30 seconds late for work and you have a little extra cortisol and adrenaline in your system because that was scary. Somebody cut you off in traffic. But what do a lot of people do with that road rage? They sit there and ruminate. they'll go, oh, that jerk, I hate these drivers. They're whatever, New Jersey drivers, they're terrible. This is awful. Like, why are people, and they might go to work and that bubbles up and explodes. But if you watch what's happening, the actual anger doesn't last very long. The way to get anger to last longer than 30 seconds is to keep replaying it in your mind, to remind yourself over and over why it's justified that you're angry.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Stoics and some Buddhist lines of thought basically say, look, a lot of these emotional things that are happening to you are caused by you just telling a story in your mind of what's going on. And so the emotions themselves are basically just an indicator that you're not finely tuned enough with reality. You're not finely tuned enough with your environment to realize that you actually don't need to be angry. You're just telling yourself a story. You don't need to have this emotion. And there's nothing wrong with you, except that you just have work to do to get more in tune with your environment. But those things are indicators, more or less, of that sort of misalignment. So, in some ways, I think that's a compatible perspective, but I think there may be some, there are fireworks. I think there may be some overlap there where things are not compatible. How do you see that perspective?
I agree with what you said. Story is huge. That's something I study a lot, like the stories that we create, the heroes and the villains and the moral superiority that we need to feel. So I definitely feel it's compatible, because when you change the story, you change your reaction. At the same time, though, there can be 40, 50 years of emotions trapped inside of somebody. And I don't think that changing the story today is going to liberate all of those emotions. And so, if you think about it, look at, the different work on like holding patterns and body armoring and such. There's different techniques that are used in order to change that armoring and to release the emotions. And changing the story is definitely one of them, but I don't think changing the story is going to release decades of emotions by any means. I think you really have to write them out. You got to let them out physically. Meditation is also great. Body work is great as well. One thing I've been doing a lot recently that's been really helping with me, because for a long time I had some major anger problems, is just using the lacrosse ball and getting into my hips and getting into my hamstrings. And just that alone makes me feel so much better. It's like I'm releasing so much stuff. And so, again, changing the story is great, but I think there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What are some common areas that you see people have these, suppressed emotions? So, for example, people listening that would be able to kind of think about those in themselves and see if that's something they'd want to write through,
Shame, guilt. Both of those are huge, because of what we learned as children. We got that book of rules, how to be in the world. You're supposed to be this way. And if you jump outside of this box, you're wrong. And you're no longer identifying with your friends and your family and the people who raised you, right? One thing that the brain is completely freaked out about is you being kicked out of the tribe, and we'll talk about that in a second with friends. But shame and guilt are huge, because people feel shameful about possibly breaking out of that box, of breaking the rules. So shame is like, I am wrong as a person. And a lot of people, if they really got real, will admit to themselves that they feel wrong as a person all day long, every single day of their life. And that energy is such a low energy. If you look at David Hawkins' map of consciousness, right there at the bottom, shame and then guilt, very low vibration energies, right? Those are going to be huge. Guilt, I did something, and that thing that I did was wrong. And people have a hard time letting go of that. Like, self-forgiveness is huge. A lot of people are not willing to forgive themselves. They're constantly ruminating on something that they did a long time ago. And without forgiving themselves, that energy, that low energy, stays trapped inside of the body. And so forgiving yourself, forgiving others is huge. Anger is a big one as well. Fear is a big one as well. And so we need to look out for those and be able to feel those emotions without trying to push them away, and to understand that, I mean, what do you do with a child who's screaming and crying? What do? You let them ride it out. You tell them it's okay. What do we do to ourselves though? We judge ourselves for having emotions. We don't judge children for that. Like, at what point do we start judging ourselves about having emotions? What happened to the compassion that we have for children? What about the compassion that we're supposed to have for ourselves? You know, compassion, with, co is with. Passion is suffering. Like, be with your own suffering without judging. It's okay. Everybody's got emotions. The more you try to push them away, the more you trap that energy inside of your body. You know what that is? That's work. That's work. That is energy. You got so much energy to get you through the day. You're literally just taking 8 different emotional beach balls and trying to hold them all under the water at the same time. And it never works. And you're wondering, like, why do I keep on freaking out? Why do I keep on sabotaging myself? Because you're not allowing those emotions to flow. Again, emotion, energy and motion, you got to allow those emotions to move through you instead of keeping them stuck inside. That's huge. And if you don't fix that, what you're going to do is you're going to spend your money in order to feel better.
As a guide, are there any times you feel like people aren't ready to start working through an emotion? And if so, how do you kind of analyze that or think about that?
You know what? People are going to do things when they're ready to do it. I can't make anybody do it. All I can do is be the guide and give them the information and give them the option, and give them a few tools. And if they use them, they use them. If they don't, they don't. I try to care about the outcome, but also to detach myself from the outcome. It's like, I just do the best I can, and that's really all I can do. All I can do is all I can do.
Yeah. You mentioned meditation. I know we keep getting distracted from these 5 F's, but I got to jump on the meditation thing because Alex and I are big on that topic. What's your experience with meditation? Like, what kinds of meditation have you learned? What does your practice look like, if anything?
I have only learned one form of meditation in my whole entire life, and it was enough for me. I read, oh my gosh, name's not coming to mind right now. Transcendental Meditation Guy. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. There you go. I read his book several years ago. I had heard Howard Stern talk about him quite a bit. Howard said that Maharishi changed his entire life with transcendental meditation. And so one day I made the call to the TM Center, took the classes, got my mantra, and I've been doing TM pretty much every day for the last 3, 4, maybe 5 years. Damn, time flies. Sometimes I do it twice a day for 20 minutes. Sometimes I do it once. Sometimes I don't do it at all. I kind of went through a little funk for a couple months when COVID started, so I got out of my habit, but I'm back into it right now. And it makes a huge difference in terms of just how I get through the day. A lot less anxiety, a lot less reactivity. The only problem that I have with meditation is this. I get the, you ever seen the yogis and they're real chill and they got this look on their face like, I know something you don't know, right? They're just like, I get that. And I don't like it because I feel like really spacey and I don't have that kind of entrepreneurial aggressiveness. You know what I'm saying? And so once I start to feel that way, I'll start to back off and then I'll slowly ramp up. So I just kind of gauge it, but that means it's working. It's working really well. And if I was an entrepreneur and, doing what I do, I would definitely love to have that. I know something you guys don't know look all the time, but it's just not conducive for what I'm doing here. But I love TM. It's one of the best decisions that I made in a really long time.
That's why I don't work out in the mornings. For the rest of the day, I'm just too chill.
Yeah. You need that energy. Sometimes I'll teach class and my students will be like, are you high right now? And I'm like, no, I'm not high at all. I'm just meditating, I guess I am high just naturally. Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely found that once I developed a good enough, so I've never done TM. My practice has all been either like Vipassana mindfulness practice or metta loving kindness practice. But I've noticed that as soon as I'm I actually build or rebuild the skill if I've had a little break from meditation, the benefits off the mat are just immense. It's like you're walking around in the world completely differently.
Totally.
And I can't say enough about how much I recommend somebody find a meditation practice that works for them. And like you'll see it. You don't even have to believe me. Just like try it. You'll see it.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I recommend it to everybody. Again, my life has completely changed since I started TM. It's huge.
Yeah. Okay. We've got friends and flow. Let's hit the friends.
Friends.
But
what did Jim Rohn say about friends? You become the 5 people you spend the most time with, or something like that. And that is so true. When you meet your friends, you tend to go into your friendship with an unwritten agreement as to who you're going to be in that relationship. You tend to meet each other when you're all kind of have the same vibration. You tend to have a lot of the same beliefs as well. You think about your friends. Most of your friends believe the same things that you do. If they didn't, you'd just be probably arguing with each other all the time. And it's really interesting what can happen when you decide to change who you are, because it's almost like you break that agreement. And that doesn't tend to go over well with your friends. Things can get awkward. You find that you don't connect with them as well as you used to. You're surprised to find out that they don't support you in your new journey the way that you thought that they would. It's almost unconsciously your friends are trying to sabotage you. Not all the time, of course, but a lot of times that's the case. And it's really interesting because you're wired, like we're all social beings, right? But we're wired to get along, to connect, but we're also wired to get ahead. And it's interesting because when we start to get ahead, we no longer match the vibration of our friend group. And it's so funny, there are actually studies that show that the human brain loves to knock people off of their pedestals. It's a trip. So people want to pull us down. They get pleasure out of pulling us down. And it doesn't make anybody bad. It's just for some reason, that's just the way the brain is wired. It's a trip. And so I think that's something to be very aware of when you go on your money journey, that you may not be a good fit for your friends anymore. You may have to change the agreement with them. You may have to tell them, like, this is what I'm doing and this is who I'm going to be moving forward. Or you may have to move along, right? One thing I say, and I've got this from Bob Proctor, go less often, don't stay as long. That's what I've had to do with a lot of my friends from the past, because mirror neurons, energy, we pick up other people's energy. And if we're trying to do something positive and our friends are trying to do something completely different, and they've got different beliefs and different emotions and those things that we're trying to get away from, we're trying to detach from so we can move on to something else, it tends to bring us down to their energy. And, if your friend group, if they're emotional, if their vibration is here and yours is moving up here, they don't know what it's like to be up here. So you're going to have to continually bring yourself down, and you don't feel like you're a good fit anymore. Dr. Lissa Rankin was on my podcast a long time ago, and she called it the empty elevator syndrome. And when you can't change the agreements and you have to move on from your friends, you tend to freak out. Your brain freaks out. It's like, I don't have a tribe anymore. I don't have protection anymore. I don't have anybody to talk to anymore. I don't have support anymore. And it's like all of your friends are in an elevator with you and they're going up. And at some point, the elevator stops and everybody else gets off the elevator. It's just you. And you're going to have to ride that elevator up several floors, excuse me, all by yourself. And it's scary to do that all by yourself. And this is why this is so important. Having these types of communities is huge. Like with Money Mind Academy, every Friday at noon, we have a mastermind call All of the students are invited, and we just help each other out. We support each other. We talk about what we're going through. And, it makes people feel like they belong to something. It makes them still feel connected. The third rung on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is love and connection. We need that. And right after that is self-esteem. And a lot of us can't get through that love and connection part. One of the biggest fears that we have is the loss of love. That's huge. That's a big one right there. I am going to lose the love of my family. I'm going to lose the love of my friends if I decide to do this. But you have to be willing to detach and ride that elevator up by yourself sometimes. And then at some point, the elevator stops and the door opens and there's new people that you've attracted into your life. That's how it works. It can be scary, but it's what a lot of us have to go through in order to get to the next level of the game.
One of the things that I've found as a benefit from this meetup, the 52 Living Ideas meetup that the Switch podcast is sort of nested in now, is that it attracts all kinds of people, but it retains people who are riding the elevator up. And whatever point they're on, like, it's like we're all aimed in the same upward direction from our various paths. And like I've gained a strong and meaningful new friend group from that, to be honest, I think let me let go of some of those people that might have held me down before, or at least been aware enough to not get in with other people that would bring me down or try to keep me down. And that's something I'm immensely grateful for with this group, because I know that, like, any of those that core people that I check in with, like, they're there and they're moving in that direction too. And that's awesome. So that all being said, the idea with that is that if you see yourself moving up and you feel like you're going to be losing your friends, we're in the 21st century. Like, you can now go on meetup.com, you can now go on all these different places and find those groups, so that before you even fully disconnect from your comfort zone of your current group, you can at least see that even if you don't see the particular landing spot, there are landing spots out there, and you don't have to, like, you can, it's almost like in the building with the elevator, like the floors are a little bit more see-through. So you can see that as you get up there, there's somebody there.
Yeah, I find that meetup, like in-person meetups, they kind of scare people.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to that unknown thing. Like, oh my God, I gotta go to somebody's house. I gotta go to the library and meet some people. You know what I mean? It's new. It's different. Again, that's why I like to have those mastermind calls like built into the course. And it's so funny because a lot of the students are like, I don't really hang out with people in person anymore. I just hang out with people online. That's my family right there. And it's just really cool. They have their own little masterminds outside of our calls. And it's a really amazing thing to get to witness over the last couple of years.
Is there room there for bringing people up as well? I mean, it's one thing to let go of people that are sort of on that lower level so that they don't drag you down.
Yeah.
But where's the reverse? Like, where is the room for, if there is, bringing those people up with you and encouraging them to move up as well?
Yeah, I mean, setting the example is huge, but here's the catch. You can't make anybody change.
No.
You can't make anybody choose to move up. That's something they have to do on their own. And so if they see you doing something great and they feel inspired by that, you'll notice that they want to take the ride up with you. But unfortunately, that can be kind of a rare thing. And it's too bad.
How important do you think, I know you said at the beginning, kind of most friend groups have a lot of shared beliefs, right? They have a lot in common. How important do you think diversity of, ideas is in that friend group? For example, I went through, and I'd consider myself a pretty balanced person, and I went through my top, it ended up being like 13 people I feel like interacting with, or I've top 13 people I interact with, and wrote down like 5 adjectives for each of them that I felt like was a positive trait that, I felt like I could learn from them. and I had almost no overlap of any of them in any adjectives. So we're talking about, at least 50 adjectives that we're not repeating. And one of the things I always, noticed was that I felt like I had that balance where there's other aspects I might want to have more focus, So how important do you think that is, and how much you model the behavior of people you're around?
I think that's important. I have a question for you. Did you do that intentionally?
No, I mean, subconsciously, maybe I did, but I tried to do the first things that came to mind. Like, I'm sure there was some subconscious avoidance, but I do feel like the ones I came up with were very accurate and apt for each individual.
Yeah.
If I kept 10 adjectives, I'm sure there would have been a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
But
in general, I think people just tend to gravitate to people who are very similar to how they are and what they believe. I think that's just kind of wired into human beings. I think that's part of belonging, having shared beliefs, feeling like you're part of the in-group, like knowing what your identity is within the group and what your identity isn't. I always say that there's room for having a few people who think differently than you do. And, I have a good friend who isn't always supportive, but I think it's a good thing because you don't always want to have yes people in your life. You always want to have, those one or two people who are going to show you holes in your plan. We're going to be like, I don't know about that. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about the other? I think that's I think that's useful. And I think it's also really cool just to be able to have different opinions in a group. There's probably not going to be a lot of different opinions, but I think it sparks really good conversation, really good debate if you don't take it personally. But again, I think it's just a natural human tendency to attract people who are just like ourselves and believe just like ourselves. Yeah.
All right, let's hit flow, and then I've got a couple more questions before we go to audience Q&A and wrap up.
Well, just getting into the flow, what I mean by this is if you've ever read The Go-Giver, the main character in the book, he was focusing on the getting. And Pindar, his mentor, said, you're pointing in the wrong direction. You're focused on the getting all the time, not understanding that this whole thing, prosperity, it's a flow. It's a flow of giving and receiving, giving and receiving, giving and getting. We take our eyes off of that giving part. A lot of us feel entitled. I've worked somewhere for 3 years. They should pay me more. What's your value? What are you bringing to the table? How are you making yourself irreplaceable? What are you bringing to your job? How are you making that company better? How are you making your clients better? If you're an online entrepreneur, how are you making your content better, right? If you think about the word money and the terms and the phrases that we use for money, a lot of them have to do with water, currency, liquidates, cash flow, making it rain. What does water do? Circulates, right? What does water do? It flows. And so we have to be able to embrace the yin and yang of it. And I find a lot of people out there want to they want to set up the business. They want to make the products. They want to, put up the sales pages and make all of the ways to make money on there and to collect the money, but they don't want to give anything. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to create any content. I don't want to go on YouTube and give away some of my best stuff. I don't want to do podcasting. And I think that's a shame. The ways that I've been able to build my business, and I didn't even learn this. This is just something that I guess was instilled in me as a kid, or I don't know, I just picked it up somewhere, was like, when you just keep giving, you're going to get back. And you're not giving to receive. You're not giving to get back. You're giving because that's just who you are, right? If money was no longer a problem, who would you be being? I would be being generous. I would be being giving. And so if you just go out there and you give and you be patient and you lead with your heart and you lead with really, really good content, I think the universe just pays you back somehow. And you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen, but you better damn be sure it's going to happen. But if you try to force it, if you try to point yourself in the wrong direction, you can be sure that you're in for a long haul until you learn how to get into the flow. You know, some of the most successful people I know, they help people every single day. My buddy Jake Ducey has a YouTube channel. He's been posting videos every day for the last 3 or 4 years. That's 500,000 subscribers, killing his business. Look at Gary Vaynerchuk, made a video every day for 17 months, still gives every single day. But I bump into people all the time. They're like, will I be able to build a successful business like sending out 1 newsletter per month? Like, no. No, that's not how you do it. You have to lead with the giving. You got to get into the flow. If not, you're done, and you're going to suffer until you wise up and you say, okay, what am I doing wrong here? And what you're doing wrong is you're not giving. That's the flow.
I like it. There's a
QOD. Just real quick. I just want to tell you real quick from that John DeMartini talk I was mentioning earlier. He had a quote in there. He said, the amount of money that you have will always be in direct proportion to the quality and the quantity of the service you provide. You know?
Yeah.
How good is your product? How good is your giving? And how many people are you giving to? You know, we like to judge billionaires. We like to judge Gates. We love to judge Zuckerberg. We love to judge Bezos. We love to judge Koch brothers. We love to judge the Oracle dude. We love to judge the Google guys, like all that stuff. Like people tend to not like them. But in one of my classes, I go, how many people here use Microsoft Words or anything that had Word or Microsoft Office or Windows or Gmail, or not Gmail, Microsoft Office? How many people use that in the last hour? Everybody puts their hand up. I say, how many people use Facebook today? How many people use Instagram in the last 15 minutes? Everybody puts their hand up, right? How many people use Google in the last 15 minutes? Everybody puts their hand up. How many people wipe their butt today? They don't put their hand up for that. But the Koch brothers are paper products. If you don't like the Koch brothers, stop giving them money. You know what I'm saying? And so how many people use the cloud today? Larry Ellison, Oracle. How many people use Amazon the last 24 hours? Everybody's hand goes up. Quality and quantity of service. If you don't like billionaires, stop giving them your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to mention there's a QOD recently. I forget who the speaker was, but she was talking about basically that principle of, she used a metaphor of dating, right? If let's say you're in New York City, you're a lady and this guy comes to pick you up. He's all dressed up and he takes you to McDonald's, right? Do you remember this one?
That was Marie Forleo, the Happy Meal mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, that's what people are doing when they're giving you their free trial version that sucks and they're not giving anything away. They're not giving you anything. So of course people are not buying into that. You're giving them the Happy Meal version and saying, but I promise on the other side of this paywall, there's the gourmet meal, there's the everything you're looking for, but you just can't see it.
It doesn't make any sense. It's a belief really in scarcity. Like, I don't have enough to give, so I got to keep everything behind this paywall, And there's a lot of people who say, don't give out your best stuff. Give out your best stuff. Give it away. Here's the thing. You can teach somebody your best stuff. They're going to forget it in 2 days. Repetition, like that's how the brain learns, repetition. How many times have you read a book the second time and been like, oh, damn, is this the same book? It's crazy, right? Yeah. And so you can give all your stuff away in videos and podcasts and all of that stuff. You can put the same stuff in your products. Nobody's going to complain because they're not going to remember. It's how the human brain works. So don't worry about it. Just give. Maximize your giving and you will maximize your getting. I guarantee it. I just guarantee it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I'm paying attention to the time. I want to make sure that we have enough time to get some Q&A from the audience in there and do the off topic. Alex, do you have any other burning questions that you want to make sure that we get in?
I just wanted to ask, I think you're like kind of interdisciplinary, very broad kind of a skill set and knowledge base is really, really interesting. What would you say you think your unique kind of contribution, I guess, to the world is based on your unique experience and all the things you've learned?
I think it's just kind of, as you said, it's just having a multidisciplinary perspective on things. I don't think anybody in the world teaches money mindset the way I teach it. And I think, just like Kobe Bryant, I think people are going to have a really hard time catching up. I think I've been studying this for years, and it's just like every day I get better and better and better and better. And so, that's my goal right now, is to like become like the world's greatest money mindset teacher. Like before you go to Dave Ramsey, you go to Sean Croxton. Like that's who I want to be. Yeah, that's who, not even who I want to be. Like that's who I'm going to be. Yeah,
that's good. Before I have a small story to tell you, but I want to make sure, are there any other points that you feel like you want to get across? Are there any other topics that you feel like you absolutely want to make sure that we hit before we head into the next section?
I think that's it. Covered it. The 5 Fs.
Cool.
You know what? I left one F out. Kind of thinking about putting it in there. It's just focus. Just like Dispenza says, you have to think above your circumstances. It's really about attention. Like, where are you putting your attention? Are you putting your attention on the way things are right now? Because if you're putting your attention on the way things are right now, you're going to keep getting more of the same. But if you use your imagination and you use those faculties that are inside of you, those hidden powers, to create an image in your head of the thing you want, we have to realize we have what's called an intention center in your brain. Your intention center is like the GPS. You punch in your destination and your intention center goes, oh, this is where we're going. And it starts to mine the subconscious mind and all the experiences you ever had that are out of your consciousness. And it says, here's an idea for you. Here's something else for you, right? It starts to give you intuitions as well. And, in order to activate that, you have to decide whatever it is that you want. I think one of the biggest problems that human beings have is indecision. We have a hard time making a decision. We have a hard time cutting ourselves off from all of the other options and becoming single-minded on one thing. But I guarantee you this, when you become single-minded on that one thing, in focus, in thought, and in feeling, completely aligned, your brain is just going to guide you to wherever it is that you want to go. Where we get stuck, my friends, is in, I don't know how I'm going to do it. You're not supposed to know how you're going to do it. That how just unfolds along the way. But the first thing you got to do is decide. You got to punch that destination into your brain. And then your brain says, all right, I've been waiting for you to do this for years. What's been up? Let's go. And the whole path just kind of unfolds for you. And it's a beautiful thing because you don't know how you're going to do it. You know why a lot of people have imposter syndrome? Is because the only thing that they really know in terms of like how they got to where they are, they just know the big rocks. They know the big things that happened, but they don't know all the little things that happened on the way. So they kind of feel like, I don't really know how I got here. And a lot of that is just because the subconscious mind just kind of guided them. But you got to make a decision. You got to punch the destination first. And you got to change your focus. You got to focus on that picture that's inside of your mind, the environment, the sights, the sounds, the feelings, the taste, the touch, all of that stuff inside of your mind. Like I can see the picture in my mind. When I meditate, I see the picture in my mind, and my subconscious mind is picking that thing up every day. And it's like, okay, every single day, little by little, I'm going to take you toward that goal. And that's my philosophy in life. I think everybody needs to have a philosophy in life. My philosophy is little by little, a little becomes a lot. It's right there over my desk. I look at it every single day. If you just keep making moves forward every single day. It's like Will Smith said on the show one day, he was talking about the bricks, something he learned from his parents. It's like, you don't set out to build a wall. You don't set out to build the biggest, baddest wall that's ever been built. What you can do is lay this brick as perfectly as it can be laid, and then soon you have a wall, right? That's it. We got to lay our bricks every single day. And if you skip days, that's on you. I took Sunday off, but that's it. I got to keep laying my bricks every day because I know that it's leading somewhere. But you got to make a decision first. Now I'm done.
Sean, that's an awesome way to wrap up. I'll give you the story at the end. That was an awesome discussion. I really appreciate it. We're going to move now to a section that we like to call the off topic. Before we do, I just want to remind the audience that we will have a short time for Q&A right after the off topic. If you've got questions for Sean, feel free to stick them in the chat. We'll call on you. You can unmute, ask your question. Make sure you keep things brief, on topic, be courteous, and we'll call on you. And so with that, Sean, the off topic, we have this section where our guests are allowed to bring up some topic that is not directly related to the main topic. It can be anything, a book, a philosophical idea, something somebody said to you in line at the grocery store, as long as it's not directly related to our main discussion. So what do you have for us today?
You know what? I had a couple things in mind, but they're probably a little bit too close to what I just got done talking about.
Yeah. That's okay. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah,
that's okay. We almost invariably end up wrapping it back around to the main topic. So, whatever you've got.
I do got something for you. It's a little bit different. I was reading this book by Mitch Horowitz called One Simple Idea. It's about the history of personal development, like going all the way back to like the 1600s or something like that. I think it's really important when you're in a industry to know the history. And you mentioned a book, the Kabbalion. Not sure if anybody's ever heard of this before, but it's a fantastic book. It's by William Walker Atkinson, and he had different pseudonyms, and his pseudonym here is the Three Initiates, and I highly, highly recommend it. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because, a lot of what we learn today in personal development goes way back to like Hermes and like Egypt, like all the way to like BC. And these ideas just kind of keep coming in and out of, they just keep kind of coming in and out of I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but a lot of what we still talk about today is based on Hermetic code. And I just thought that it was really fascinating to learn and to read this book and be like, oh my God, this is still the stuff that we learn today. And so it's just cool to be able to learn the history of stuff. And so I highly recommend this book, The Kabbalion. I was surprised that I hadn't heard about it before, but like they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or the book appears. And this time it did. So check that one out.
Awesome.
And I'm also really excited about basketball season. I'm a basketball junkie, right? July 30th, NBA's back. I'm like focused on getting a lot of work done right now just so I can take a break and watch the rest of the NBA season. It's my thing. It's my jam.
Okay, so I have a basketball question then. What do you get out of basketball? Like what are the things that you find value in?
I just get joy out of watching basketball, man.
Yeah.
It is, I play a lot of basketball. I have a hoop in front of my house. I play in the driveway a few days a week. Like I said, I grew up loving Michael Jordan. I thought I was going to be in the NBA one day, but that thing didn't happen. And so, there's this Jimmy Goldstein. So if you ever watch basketball, like the big games, there's this old guy. He always wears funny hats and funny jackets. Like you always notice this guy. He goes to all of the big games. And that's one of my goals in life. Like I'm going to be the next Jimmy Goldstein. I'm going to sit front row every single big game. I've been to I was at 2 of the top 5 games of the 2010s, which is kind of crazy because I didn't go to many games, but I just love basketball. I was at game 7 of the Warriors and the Cavs when LeBron won with the Cavs. I was at Kobe Bryant's last game, which is probably like the greatest thing I've ever seen with my 2 eyes. Like if it was a movie, I would have walked out. It was nuts, right? Wow. And so I'm just a basketball junkie, man. I love it. I cannot get enough. When the season is over, like I go through like a little bit of a withdrawal, and then then it's summer league. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, let's go to a couple of questions I know we're like right at the 90-minute mark. Are you cool to go for another 10 minutes?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. So like I said, anybody with questions, feel free to stick them in the chat. The first one up is Sanjay. If you're still, yep, you're here. Sanjay, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can ask your question. Otherwise, if you want, type it in the chat. I will ask it for you.
Sanjay, go ahead and unmute yourself. I've just enabled that.
Yeah, I didn't really have a question. I was just wondering what his background was. I came a little late.
Okay. All right.
I'm a big nerd, Sanjay. That's it. I like to read books and stuff. I saw your question in the sidebar. I teach a course online called Money Mind Academy. I've been teaching it for the last 2 or 3 years. It's crazy, like just the lives that it's been able to change, and it's really, really fulfilling to teach it. So that's an 8-week class where I just break down all of the stuff that we just got done talking about, but from a deeper level. And yeah, the students really, really love it. So if you want to learn more about that, go to moneymindacademy.com. I'm launching in a couple of weeks on July 14th, as a matter of fact.
Cool. Next up is Brian Park.
Hey, Sean, just want to know if you studied neuro-linguistic programming at all and if you have an opinion on it.
I have. I read that book. It actually changed my entire life. The Game by Neil Strauss, which is like a book about picking up women. However, it came out like 2007. However, it's like a personal development book in disguise for men. And it really changed my life because it introduced me to like Tony Robbins and Napoleon Hill and a lot of people who I study now. But one of the books that he recommended was a book called Frogs to Princes by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And that was one of the books that I picked up, and I became quite fascinated with NLP. I've got probably about 10 NLP books in my office here. I probably read most of them. I think it's incredibly fascinating. It's where I learned about those generalizations and deletions and distortions that I talked about earlier. It's a really great way to learn about how the brain works in a way that doesn't so much talk about the brain, which is pretty fascinating. And so, yeah, I have studied it, haven't done any certifications or anything like that. I just kind of dabbled in it a little bit, took out what I wanted to take out, fit it into my model, and that's really it.
It's kind of been dismissed as pseudoscience. Do you have any response to that?
I really don't know enough about NLP to have a thought on that. However, what I can say is those things that I've taken from NLP and put into my course, such as the generalizations and distortions and deletions that I was talking about, those are things that are referred to quite a bit in the neuroscience types of books and readings that I've done, which is pretty cool. I really love to be able to talk about something and be able to take it back to something I've learned about the brain. Like, I don't want to be one of those self-help guys who's just like out there just singing platitudes and saying the same thing over and over again. Like, the way for me to be able to understand something and be able to get to the point where I can accept that is to know that it's been backed by some type of science. You know, I have a kinesiology degree. Like, I studied science in college. And so I kind of need that. And so, you know, with that said, what I know about NLP is it's definitely not pseudoscience. At least I don't think so.
Fair enough. All right. Next up is Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Sarah, you are unmuted. Go ahead. Oh, okay. I can ask Sarah's question for her if she's not going to. Okay. She says, you were talking about doers and learners. In regards to doers, what do you think about people in the extreme who want to do everything and have so many passions and so many projects? Do they still have to focus on one?
One or two. I'll tell you, if you're focusing on too many things, you're not going to get anything done. A divided mind never builds greatness. That's what I know for sure. We only have so much energy. We only have so much time. You don't want to be a jack of all trades and be the master of none. You want to be known for something. Like, what are you known for? And I think the only way you become a real expert is to be known for that one thing, maybe two things, but preferably that one thing. And so I would take those projects and, think about like, how do I feel about each of these projects? What's the one that makes me vibrate the most? What's the one that I'm most excited about right now, and do that one. What I find is that a lot of entrepreneurs take on all of these different projects because it keeps them from ever finishing any of them. It's like, it's just a mechanism that they use. I'm really good at managing my ideas. I have a notepad on my computer, and I get ideas all of the time, and I just write them down. I'm like, maybe 2022, I'll do something like that. Or maybe I'll just give it to a friend who might want to do that idea, because I know I can't do them all and do them really well. And so stick to one, maybe two, but not too many, because it doesn't tend to work out.
Next up is Chris. Chris, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, Sean. I really enjoyed that speech. I was just wondering, since you alluded to sort of the pain of not maybe accomplishing your life goals, was there anything, was there any one experience? Was there any way that you overcame that fear barrier? Has it gotten easier, like working out at the gym, not every time that you face the fear barrier? Or do you still feel like the same fear every time? And then on a different note, do you agree Michael Jordan is the GOAT? Since you brought up your love of basketball.
Well, no, thanks for the question, Chris. Michael Jordan is definitely the GOAT. Definitely. LeBron is great. I think Kobe is the closest to Michael Jordan. LeBron is 3-6 in the NBA Finals. Like, that's not a really good record. MJ was 6-0. Kobe was 5-2. And so MJ will probably always be the GOAT. And his footwork was amazing. But anyway, getting back to your question, how does one overcome fear? I'm sorry, Chris, what was the first part of your question? I'm hungry.
The fear barrier. How does one overcome it? Has it gotten easier to face that? Or do you still face it every time?
I face it every day, man. Every single day. I faced it when we started here. I always feel fear. I never expect it to go away. That's the thing with entrepreneurs. Actually, that's the thing with everybody, really. We expect there to be this day where we wake up and there's no more fear. That day is never going to come. It is just not. There's a really good book I recommend. It's called Iconoclast. It's by Gregory Burns. A neuroscience scientist reveals how to think differently. And it's all about iconoclast and how they perceive differently and how they manage their fears differently. And they perceive fear differently. They perceive fear as just a feeling that, they're about to do something really great. Everybody else sees fear as like, oh my God, I shouldn't do this. I should stop. And so when I see fear, I go, all right, I'm nervous, but then I try to reframe it and say to myself, okay, maybe I'm not nervous. I'm just excited. Because the symptoms of being nervous and excited are pretty much the same. It's just all how we label them, right? And so, every time I record the podcast on Friday mornings, I'm a little bit nervous. Every time I do a podcast like this, I'm a little bit nervous. I've never done a podcast with this many people watching live in my life. And so I'm coming in here like, oh shit, like there's about to be live people in here. I hope I'm good. I'm gonna be able to see their faces. And if I suck, then they're gonna look away and all this stuff. Like it happens to me. It happens to everybody. Lisa Nichols is on the show tomorrow, and she reads a letter by Dr. Martin Luther King about how he wanted to quit, And so sometimes we think I'm unique. I'm the only one who feels this way. No, the greatest of the great have felt the way that you feel. They all wanted to quit. They all had to push through their fears. They all get nervous before a talk, like everybody. But I know going into this podcast recording, nervous, I knew in the beginning, like I'm nervous, my mouth is getting dry, right? I don't know where to look, but I know at the end of this, I'm going to feel really good. And I'm going to feel like I've grown just like a millimeter, But if I decided to not do it, I would have shrunk a millimeter. And so the fear never goes away. Does it get easier? Yes, but the fear itself never goes away. I started making YouTube videos about 6 months ago. I just made a few of them, then my cameraman quit and I just got out of the habit. But I hadn't made YouTube videos for 3 or 4 years, right? And I remember, I'm lucky I had some jeans on, because when we started, my knees were just knocking. Boom, 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 boom. I've made hundreds of YouTube videos, but I was freaked out. I was scared, because it's natural to be scared. That's how your brain is wired. That's who you are. It's just really how you look at it, how you perceive it. And do you say, is this fear going to make me stop? Or am I just going to feel the fear and do it anyway, which is a book by Susan Jeffers. But that's really it. Feel the fear and do it anyway. It's never going away, my friends. You got to let that one go.
Cool. All right. We're at a fork in the road. We've got more questions coming in, but
Go.
Okay, let's do it. Roshan, you are up.
Hey, you suggested many books, and there's lots of books in your background. So I wanted to ask you what your take is on getting the most out of books, and how do you read them?
All right. Number one, I very seldom read a book once. If I've read a book once, I haven't really read it at all, really. I go through every book with a highlighter the first time. The second time I go through it with a pen, and I just kind of underline the really important stuff that I highlighted the first time. And sometimes I'll write some notes in the margins. I typically start off my day with meditation. I'll get in my hot tub and I'll read for an hour. The hot tub is set for an hour. Once it stops, I feel good that I've got an hour of reading in that day. And everything else is just extra. It's usually 2 or 3 hours that I'll get into the day. But the key, my friend, is it's again, the repetition. That's how your brain is wired. And you'll notice when you read something for a second time, it's almost like reading it for the first time. And so, yeah, that's really all I can give you on that one. It's also really cool. I have a book club as well. It's called the Rich Lit Society. And we read books together and we talk about them. So that helps to reinforce it. And I always tell them, hey, read this chapter twice, then show up on Wednesday and we'll talk about them. And just the discussion kind of helps to reinforce even more what we learned. It makes it more applicable as well. And another thing, what you learn, use it. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And so whatever you learn, just see, okay, how can I apply this to my life? How can I try this? Can I teach this? Can I put it into my course? Is it something I can have my students do? Sure, maybe I should do it first before I have my students do it. But, that type of thing. And so that's pretty much all I got for you, Roshan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jeff.
Hey, Sean, thank you so much for this evening. It was really a wonderful and powerful presentation.
Thank you, Jeff.
And if you had any second thoughts about it, you did a great job.
Thank you.
I'm interested in how a focus on money mindset has benefited you personally in your own life. And I was going to ask you why that particular, of all the things you might have focused on, why that one.
Yeah.
And feel free to answer that too. But I thought maybe I'd ask it with a different angle. How has it really affected you?
Thank you for the question, Jeff. It's affected me because when I first started this journey with money mindset back in 2008 or 2009, I was broke, man. I was really broke. I was hurting. I rotated the same 2 pairs of jeans over and over again. I wore the same gray sweater every day. I was stressed out about how I'm going to pay the rent, how I'm going to pay the bills. I had student loans. I had a ton of credit card debt because my freshman year of college, they were giving away free towels if you signed up for a credit card. Back in 95, that was legal. And I just racked up a lot of credit card debt. I was like, oh, I can just go buy stuff without paying for it? That's crazy. And so, I got to be 29, 30 years old, feeling like I was so behind. And also, being an entrepreneur, I had done smaller entrepreneurial things like selling bootleg Tupac CDs and stuff like that at school, right? But I'd never done anything where there was a possibility that I can make, an enormous amount of money. And I think everybody has their financial thermostat. And my financial thermostat, around that time was like maybe $40,000 a year, really. And so having 30,000 YouTube subscribers and seeing the possibilities and feeling so frustrated because I was afraid to pitch anything. I was afraid to mention a product because people might call me a sellout. I had that wired into my brain. If you make money and if you sell things, you're a sellout. Like, I don't believe that anymore, but that's what I believed back then. And number one, learning or listening to that John DeMartini talk about values changed my life. Reading Harv Eker's book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, just was the next step. And I went from being flat broke with a ton of credit card debt to 9 to 12 months later, sitting on my couch one night and just paying all of my debt off at once. It was like, boom, 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 boom. I'm 100% debt free. And it was crazy because if I hadn't learned what I learned about money mindset, just a little bit that I had learned back then in 2009, I wouldn't have had the courage and the alignment to launch the products and to create the products that I created and to create the content as well. I sold an online summit, created an online summit. I sold a network marketing product. I created an ebook, which people still buy today, 10 years later. I created 7 online summits, as a matter of fact, and I created a 7-figure business. I live in $1 million house, in San Diego with a beautiful view. And it's like my life has gone from broke to like really abundant and having whatever I want to have. And it wasn't really about money management principles. It was about what goes on in here. What do the money management people tell you? Skip your lattes. Stop doing all the stuff that you really love to do. Your life sucks. Like, your life just sucks, right? When you do that. So stop trying to hold on to the little that you have and open up yourself up to becoming pretty much a magnet for money. Because here's the thing about money. We can't save or earn or invest money that we won't allow ourselves to have. And that was my thing. I wasn't allowing myself to have any money because of what was going on up here. But when I cleared out all of those money blocks, money just started to show up in my life. Money shows up in my life every day. It's like, you look at my Infusionsoft account, it's like, oh, we made some money today. Oh, we made some money today. It's really, really cool. And I would not have been able to do that without changing my mindset around money. I would just be barely getting by or always struggling to stay out of debt. I don't think about money anymore. It just comes. It's a beautiful thing. I feel like there was a part of your question I didn't answer yet.
That was terrific. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Jeff.
All right. So I want to wrap up by telling you a story, Sean. Basically, I'm extremely grateful for you coming on this podcast. Like I mentioned in the beginning, my fiance and I listen to QOD all the time. And I want to tell you a story about something that we changed just a little bit in our lives relatively recently after listening to a QOD episode. So there was an episode, I think it was in February, with Ed Foreman, who told this story. And I think the quote for that day was something like, nobody can make you angry if you let them, something along those lines. But he tells this story about being 5 years old and running around on the farm with his mother, who every single morning would tell him, we're going to have a good day today. And that set the pace for the day. And he realized that, like, you can actually decide. You have the power to decide every single day whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day. So now with quarantine, this COVID situation, we've been super lucky that one of the things we've been doing is taking care of these couple of 3-year-olds that are proximate to our life. And so we're essentially homeschooling 3-year-olds. And one of the things we incorporated into our routine every single morning, right when we're starting the day, we go over to the calendar and we do the day of the week. Okay, today's Monday. We did it today. today's Monday, today's the 29th of June, here's the season, here's the weather. And as we wrap up that calendar, all together, we all say, today's going to be a good day. And it's amazing because it sets the pace for the kids.
Yeah.
They're 3.5, but I don't think they even understand it so much as it makes a difference for them.
Yes.
So that is one of the effects that you have had on my life. So all that to say, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for doing your show and doing your work. If people are interested in following up with you, seeing what you're doing, seeing, what projects you're working on, where can people find all of that?
You can go to SeanCroxton.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Sean Croxton. And I do have the Money Mind Academy launch coming up. And so if you want to jump into the course, I'm teaching a class and opening up enrollment on July 14th. So if you go to moneymindacademy.com, you'll get on the launch list. And so you won't miss any news that comes out about the launch. And so again, that's moneymindacademy.com. Thank you, Chase. Thank you, everyone. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
All right, folks. So Sean, that was amazing.